So, have you ever stopped to think about whether the language we use every single day is, well, truly neutral? We're about to dive into a pretty radical idea from 20th century France. It's called L'Écriture Féminine, or feminine writing, and it basically suggests that the very words we speak might have a hidden bias. It really asks us to rethink the whole nature of language itself.
Let's just jump right in with a quote from one of the movement's key thinkers, Hélène Cixous, that really gets to the heart of it. Women must write their bodies. Now that is the provocative core of this whole idea. This belief that a totally new kind of language, one that's rooted in physical experience and the unconscious, could unlock a completely new way of being in the world.
And this really is the central question we're digging into today. Is the structure of our language, the grammar, the logic, is it actually neutral? Or could it be that the system we just take for granted is suddenly shaped by a single dominant point of view? And if that's true, what would it even look like to try and change it?
To really get where an idea this big came from, we have to go back in time, specifically to Paris in 1968, because this wasn't just some abstract theory cooked up in a university. Nope, this was forged in the fire of a genuine social revolution.
Okay, so picture this. May 1968 in France. The streets are filled with protests. It's an atmosphere where everything feels possible, like society could be remade from the ground up. In the years that followed, intellectuals grabbed onto that revolutionary energy and turned it inward. They started arguing that to really change society, you first had to change the very tools we think with, language itself. And this thinking led right to cornerstone texts like Julia Kristeva's Revolution in Poetic Language in 1974.
So, out of this intense desire to revolutionize not just what was happening in the streets, but what was happening in our minds, this powerful new concept starts to take shape.
And here it is, L'Écriture Féminine. At its core, it's a style of writing that is deliberately trying to break free from what its supporters saw as a rigid, male-centric way of thinking. Instead of strict logic, it aims to tap into something much more fluid, more intuitive, something deeply connected to the body and the unconscious mind.
And this wasn't just the idea of one person. It was a real collective intellectual project. You had thinkers like Cixous Irigaray and Kristeva all chipping in, each with their own unique take on how to pull off this linguistic revolution.
And this is where the contrast really becomes crystal clear. On one side, you have what these thinkers called phallocentric discourse. Think of language that's all about rigid categories, strict logic, and ultimately upholding existing power structures. And on the other side, you have the goal of feminine language, to be fluid, less structured, rooted in the body, and dedicated to undermining that very power.
Now, it's really important to know that this wasn't a universally accepted idea, not even among all feminists. Some thinkers, like Monique Wittig, really pushed back. They argued that focusing so heavily on the body was kind of a trap, that it risked reducing women to just their biology and wasn't actually a very effective way to create real political change in the world. To go a bit deeper, let's zoom in on probably the most complex and influential theorist of the group, Julia Kristeva. Her work gives us this incredible framework for understanding exactly how language could be revolutionary.
Her book from 1974, Revolution in Poetic Language, is basically our roadmap here. And in it, she puts forward this fascinating idea that our entire sense of self, who we think we are, is formed by this constant push and pull between two totally different realms of experience.
And this chart lays it out perfectly. On the left, you have the semiotic. Just think of this as the raw, chaotic energy that exists before language. Bodily drives, rhythms, all the experiences we have as infants before we can actually name them. Then, on the right, you have the symbolic. This is the world of rules, grammar, and social order that we're all born into. It's the system that gives things meaning and tells us who we are.
So the really crucial part is how these two realms interact. Our everyday structured world, the symbolic, is constantly being pushed and prodded by these primal energies from the semiotic. Kristeva said that when that pressure gets strong enough, it can actually crack the surface of conventional meaning. And right there, in that moment of disruption, totally new possibilities for thought can rush in.
Okay, so if this disruption is the goal, where does it actually happen? For Kristeva, the answer isn't in the streets, it's on the page.
Right. Kristeva argued that this revolution happens in art, specifically in what we call avant-garde literature and poetry. Those experimental texts that intentionally play with language, break all the grammatical rules, and just push the boundaries of what we think is normal.
For her, these texts are the places where the raw energy of the semiotic can literally burst through the cracks of the symbolic.
And she wasn't just speaking in hypotheticals. She pointed to very specific examples, like the super-complex poetry of Mallarmé or the boundary-shattering novels of James Joyce, as places where you can actually see this linguistic revolution happening in real time.
And this all builds to her final, really powerful point. This isn't just about making weird, interesting art. As Kristeva herself puts it, the whole goal is to produce a different kind of subject. In other words, by creating a new kind of language, you can actually create a new kind of person, someone who thinks differently and is therefore capable of building a different kind of society.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? It really boils down to a simple but pretty profound idea. Language is power. The core argument here is that by disrupting the very language that holds our social structures together, you can start to break those structures down from the inside out, opening up entirely new ways of seeing the world and ourselves. Which leaves us with one last big question to chew on. Is it actually possible? Can changing the way we write, the very words we use, truly lead to changing the way we live? It's a question that really challenges us to think about that deep, often invisible connection between our words and our world.